Hello, sexy people. This is Jackie with the Sexy Politico podcast here with part 2 of our series honoring Jewish people in government for Hanukkah. Today we'll be honoring Jewish women in Congress. I want to let you know I did most of my research today off of the Jewish Virtual Library, not sponsored by the way. I'm not that cool to have a sponsor yet. It's an easy-to-follow digital library that helped me easily find the information I needed for this podcast. Currently, as of December 2020, there is 1 Jewish woman serving in the United States Senate and 9 Jewish women serving in the House of Representatives. When the new Congress comes in January, there will be 2 Jewish women in the Senate and 10 in the House, although they're not going to be the exact same women in the House. But let's go back a little bit. Who was the first person of Jewish descent who has ever served as a senator? His name was David Levy Ewell. He is from Florida. He served from 1845 to 1851 and then again from 1855 to 1861. The first Jewish member of the House of Representatives was Louis Charles Levin from Pennsylvania, who served from 1844 to 1850. To put it mildly, both of these men were problematic by a lot of different standards. Ewell was a secessionist and believed in slavery, and then you have Levy, who created his own party and believed that only natural-born people who were born in the United States should be allowed to serve in government. So they were both kind of problematic. Not even kind of. They were both problematic. But let's move forward to the women. Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer were the first 2, and until this past election, only 2 Jewish women to ever serve in the Senate. Dianne Feinstein technically is the first Jewish female senator because she was elected in a special election to replace a senator who became governor. So she was sworn in right after that November election. And Barbara Boxer was also elected the same time, but she wasn't sworn in until January. Feinstein and Boxer were the first 2 pair of female senators to serve together in the same state. When Boxer retired, Kamala Harris took her place, so hopefully the seat will be filled by another strong woman when Kamala Harris has to resign her seat. Feinstein and Boxer came to the Senate in 1992. Then it was known as Year of the Woman, which 2018 was called Year of the Woman as well. But why was 1992 known as the Year of the Woman? Well, in 1991, there was a contested confirmation hearing for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. At the time, the only 2 women in the Senate were not on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, let's move backwards just a little bit. Clarence Thomas's confirmation hearing was really contested because of Anita Hill and the sexual harassment allegations that came about that. That in and of itself is a whole big bag of cats and not appropriate for this podcast at the time, but let's just say that it's way more than anybody could imagine until the Kavanaugh hearings happen. So after that 1991 confirmation hearing, 5 women were elected to the Senate. 4 brand new women were elected to the Senate in 1992. And so that year there were 6 female senators. This was insane for the time, and the media called it the Year of the Woman. It's insane to think that just having 4 new women in the Senate made everything called the Year of the Woman, as though these women had any large block of power that they could have without any men. But of these 4 new women who joined, 2 of them were Jewish women. Let's take a look at the House of Representatives now. The first woman of Jewish descent to win a seat in the House was Florence Kahn, who served from 1925 to 1937 when she lost re-election. She was first elected in a special election to replace her deceased husband in 1925, but she won re-election 5 times, so she must have been doing something right. It took until 1971 for another Jewish woman to be elected, Bella Abzug. 26 total women of Jewish descent have been elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. 2 of these 26 women have been Republican. The rest were Democrats. 9 total Jewish women are serving in the House as we speak. I'm going to focus on the second Jewish woman to be elected to the House, Bella Abzug. And I sincerely apologize if I am butchering that name. She was a feminist. She was a part of the women's rights movement and known as an eco-feminist. Abzug's first campaign slogan in 1970 was, "This woman's place is in the House of Representatives," which, if we look all over Twitter, Tumblr, and, a feminist cross-stitch book I got as a gift from my mother-in-law, that saying has been borrowed, stolen, something like that. This woman, though, Bella Abzug, would fight unwinnable fights in court. Her politics put her on Nixon's master list of political opponents, and she was one of few attorneys who would fight against McCarthy. This one was just a complete badass. While she was in Congress, she was one of the few members of Congress to support gay rights, introducing the first federal gay rights bill known as the Equality Act of 1974 with Representative Edward Koch of New York City. She lost her Senate bid by only 1%. She authored 2 books, Bella, Miss Abzug Goes to Washington, and The Gender Gap, which I need to find and read and maybe even add them to my own library. The third Jewish woman to ever be elected was Elizabeth Holtzman, who was, while a badass in her own right, wasn't as interesting, but she did write a book recently called The Case for Impeaching Trump by Elizabeth Holtzman. And she was also the youngest woman to be elected to Congress until very recently. So she's still pretty cool. The Jewish women who have served in Congress and have served in the judiciary have done a lot for this country. They've expanded women's rights, they've moved men and women closer to a place of equality, and I just want to say thank you. Honestly, I just want to see more women being badasses and running the show. There are women in this country from 25 to 95 of different ages, races, abilities, socioeconomic backgrounds that deserve a seat of power at the table. 25 is the youngest age you can be to be in the House of Representatives. That's right now all I'm trying to highlight, that the inequality of women in government correlates to the inequality of women's power in the real world. Not all women will or should ever agree with each other either. That's why we need to have a diversity of women's voices to be heard in all of Congress, in the judiciary, and hopefully we have both Republican and Democratic women presidents. In reality, my opinion is that the moment we have a trans man or woman in Congress will be this leap forward of equality that I have a hard time imagining. I don't know about you, but I guess, to be fair though, I didn't expect to see a woman vice president in my lifetime, let alone a woman of color as vice president. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised if we see a trans man or a trans woman as a congressperson within the next 10 to 15 years. Since it was requested, next week we will be discussing the Electoral College. Where did it come from? Why does it work the way it does, and how can it be designed that somebody can win the presidency without winning the popular vote? All these questions and more will be answered next week. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate every single one of you. Please share this podcast with your family, friends, or enemies. I don't really care if they are your enemies. They're not mine, and they're listening. Please subscribe, leave a rating or a comment. It really helps us to see who's listening and what we can do to cater our podcast more to you. Thank you again. Stay sexy this holiday season. Happy Hanukkah. Bye.